Hi, I'm Darlene Carmen, and welcome to the show. Jason DeWeese is a horticulturist for Flora Grub Gardens and East West Trees in San Francisco. He is a palm tree expert who advises public agencies, landscape professionals, and gardeners on the proper selection of palms to use in garden designs. His book, Designing with Palms, has palm trees from all over the world and is beautifully illustrated. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darlene. I appreciate your inviting me.
Your book has opened a lot of things for me that I didn't realize. Like one, I have houseplants and I have palm trees that I didn't even know that I had. Like I have a sago, I have a Kenosha palm, and I have a fishtail palm is huge, but I didn't realize that they were palm trees. Then I went outside and I thought palm trees like sago palms and ponytail palms, and then I found out they're not really palms. So how do people really know that they have a palm? What's the difference?
You know, isn't it amazing? It's like our house cat is a member of the same family that the lion is a member of, and we get to have them in our own homes.
Yeah.
Palms are a plant family. They're distinct. There are 2,500 species of them. They're mostly tropical palm plants, and they live mostly between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Some of them, though, live farther north, and those are the ones that we get to grow in our gardens here in California. Palms are flowering plants, but the easiest way to tell a palm is not by the flowers necessarily, but by the leaves.
By the leaves.
So, for example, if you look at this bamboo palm or pacaya palm, you can see that the leaf is shaped like a feather, like a seagull feather. That's the structure of the leaf. And the new leaf comes out of the top of the stem in a spear-like structure that's sort of a compressed leaf. And from that, the leaf unfolds. So you can see right here, the new leaf is unfolding. It hasn't fully developed into this perfect feather shape.
One leaf.
One leaf at a time.
Only.
Yes.
Okay.
On the top of the stem. And in fact, there's only one bud on the top of every palm tree's stem. So if you were to cut the crown off of a palm tree, you would be killing that individual plant because it cannot branch.
Oh.
So
I didn't know that.
the key feature to look for if you're trying to figure out if you're looking at a palm is, does it have a feather leaf or does it have a fan leaf? So the fan leaf is found on these two types of palms. This one's called a needle palm, and that one is called a waggy palm, or the dwarf Chinese windmill palm. Both of them have a fan leaf. It's a fan like you would use to keep yourself cool.
Yes.
It's that same structure. So if you're thinking, is it a palm? Look for the feather or for the fan. Now the sago.
Those are the two types of the leaves.
Those are the two types of the leaves to look for to see if you're looking at a palm. Now the sago does have a feather leaf, but it is not actually a palm. And the reason you can tell that is that it doesn't have that spear coming up in the middle and unfolding. The way the leaves come out on the sago, which is a commonly grown plant in our California gardens, is like fern leaves. They unfurl all at once.
In the center, which I can't reach, but it's in the center.
It's in the center, and right now...
And they all come out at one time.
They all come out at one time. So right now, we can look at this plant, and we can see that those smaller leaves in the center came out all at once in a flush together. That doesn't happen with palms. One leaf comes up at a time. They unfold. In the sago, many leaves uncurl all together in a flush. And then the last plant that you mentioned is the ponytail. The ponytail has a strapped shape leaf. It doesn't have a leaf shaped like a feather, and it doesn't have a leaf shaped like a fan.
And it's a succulent.
And it turns out it's a succulent as
well.
This one's a cycad.
Cycad.
So cycads are really interesting ancient plants that are more related, believe it or not, to pine trees than they are to palm trees.
I think we also had a picture that you wanted to show.
Yeah, we've got a great shot.
We have one picture up front. And what is this of? What
So
is
the photo that we're looking at is of a garden in Sonoma County, California. Well, that that my friend Roger Raish designed, and so we've got that photo up now. In the center of the photo, we have what's called
Is
the
this the right
beaked.
photo?
This is exactly the right photo.
Okay.
We've got the beaked yucca, and that's a bluish, beautiful plant. It's got a crown of leaves and a trunk. You might think that's a palm, but if you look carefully at the shape of the leaf, it's just a dagger shape or a strap shape. Up above in that same photograph, you can see a fan palm, which happens to be this very same species I brought on set. And so there's a comparison available to you in the photo. The dagger-shaped leaf of the yucca in the middle of the shot, and then the fan-shaped leaf of the palm in the upper left corner of the shot. Wow. So this is my example. Very commonly, we might think that the cordyline plant that we have all over our gardens in the Bay Area is a Dracaena palm, but in fact, it's not.
That's also called a tea plant?
Yes, that's another name for
you,
that.
'cause I
But it has
happen-
strap-shaped leaves. So that's your immediate tell. Strap-shaped leaf must not be a palm.
Well, one thing I was surprised about to find out is the different ways, the range that palm trees are used. So like I noticed my neighbor has a really tall, skinny palm, and it acts like an entry to the home.
Yeah.
But then across the street, I've watched them grow 2 seedlings, which I have a feeling
Are from that tall one.
and I've watched
Watch
them
out.
grow up. They're
Yeah.
so fast, and now they're almost as tall, maybe they are as tall as the house, and there's 2 of them, and they're acting like a screen
Yeah,
or separation between the houses.
Yeah.
So what other ways are palms used in the garden?
Well, I love the examples that you bring up because palms really, in California especially, and Northern California, are used as sentries at the entrances to homes. People, especially in farm
formal.
communities,
It's
it's
very
very
formal, huh?
and it's a way of
Yeah.
saying this is a cultivated space, this is a farm, this is a place of bounty. Because of course palms, in our Western horticultural tradition, originate with the date palm in the deserts of the Middle East. That's our oldest gardening tradition, and date palms are a source of food, and they're a source of shelter, and they also indicate where water is. And so a farmhouse with 2 palm trees at the entrance is a very natural combination for us in California. But the allée is a classic example of expanding that from just the 2 centuries all the way down the road. And so at Stanford University, Palm Drive is lined with Canary Island date palms. And I think we have a beautiful shot of that.
We do.
Taken by my collaborator,
There it
Caitlin
is.
Atkinson.
That's beautiful.
So almost all the photographs we're showing today are by Caitlin Atkinson, who was a valuable collaborator and is a good friend.
For the book.
For the book,
Yes.
yes. She did a wonderful job, and I really appreciate the work that we did together. So here we have Stanford's Palm Drive, and that's the classic picture of how palms are used in Northern California landscapes. And there's hardly any plant that does a better job because palms are very regular. If you choose one particular palm species, you pretty much know how big it's going to be, how fast it's going to grow, and you plant them all together, and you get a very even effect, which is beautiful for an allée.
That's beautiful.
In the next shot, we've got a very different and very modern use of palms. Here we have the blue Atlas fan palm. This is a palm native to Morocco and Algeria from the mountains. It's very drought tolerant, very cold tolerant, and it's got a beautiful bluish cast to the leaf.
That's
And
beautiful.
this photograph was taken in Tongva Park, which is in Santa Monica, down in Southern California. And James Corner Field Operations designed this park with a sort of texture of grasses throughout, and then using other plants as accents, succulents, palms, and then large trees. And the palms play beautifully with the grasses because they have a very structured leaf, whereas the grass has a very soft and kind of blousy leaf,
Nice
a foliage.
contrast.
Yeah, it's a
Yes,
really nice
yes,
contrast.
very.
And the other thing that's really interesting about this planting that you can see in the photo, there are some young palm trees. So the blue Atlas palm is a shrub. It makes multiple stems from the base, just like this needle palm does. And it never gets very tall, whereas other palms that they planted young are currently foliage plants, but they will grow up and become palm trees, singular palm trees. So that's what I love about that design. We have another shot, I think, to talk about. So here's a pretty classic use of palms. This is a garden in Charleston, South Carolina. and these are called jelly palms. And they are used to anchor the corners of garden rooms. It's a very formal city garden based on rectangles with a gorgeous modern pool. And into the pool arch some little fountains that echo the arch of the leaves of that jelly palm. But they're just a really nice formal element, and yet they provide movement in the space and a certain energy that none of the other plants in that garden do, the rest of which is quite formal.
Nice.
Let's see what else we can talk about. Yes, the classic image of the palm is the coconut palm by the beach. And really, if you're in the tropics, there is hardly a better plant to grow on the beach. The coconut palm conjures that relaxed feeling, not just because we associate it with our vacation to Hawaii or Mexico, but also because they move slowly in the breeze, and the sound, the rustling in the breeze is very relaxing.
You can almost hear it.
Exactly.
Just looking at it.
And the sound component of palms is something that people don't necessarily think about when they're incorporating palms into a landscape. But it's a really important part of it. It really creates an atmosphere for a garden.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. What we're seeing here is palms used as a hedge. So these are called bamboo palms. And this is a garden designed by David Staubach in San Francisco. These are hedges up against a wall flanking a beautiful mirror. And they're clustering small palms, and they act almost like really well-behaved bamboo. They're a nice alternative to bamboo because they don't run and they're not messy the way bamboo is. And yet they provide pretty much the same effect. And they're particularly effective in a shady garden, and often in a city garden, but not necessarily. I think we're done with that set of photos.
Okay, that's fine. Well, what would you say is the most common way that palms are used?
You know, in California, palms are used, honestly, for symbolism. I think I draw upon the historian Jared Farmer's book, Trees in Paradise, in which he describes the palm's job as to signify, and the signification is we live in paradise, or we live in a lovely climate, or we offer to you a better life if you come to California.
Oh, now that I can relate to. Tropical, not so much, but yes, I see what you're saying, a better life. Okay,
indeed,
I can go with that.
and I think that that's a lovely feeling, but my hope is that my book will help people see beyond that, and that they will see that palms actually have particular aesthetic qualities that are very useful in garden design. The symbolic power of palms is undeniable, and it's also useful in designing gardens. But I wouldn't want gardens using palms solely for their symbolic value.
Yeah, of course not. I wouldn't have even thought of that. But I liked in your book, you explained that palms can often be a better choice than trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave that a lot of thought. And one thing that you mentioned is that they don't have tap roots. Well, a couple of years ago, we had to have our sewer pipes fixed and the water pipes and stuff like that.
It's expensive.
And we have a huge silk oak in our front yard, but the people that did the work said that it was the Hollywood junipers that were the problems. And I thought, what? And I don't know why is that even a tree or is that a shrub? I don't know. But anyway, you know, that's what they said, that was just so invasive.
Yeah.
So, so how can they be beneficial in a garden instead of trees?
Palms have fibrous roots, so they're constantly making roots from the base of the trunk, new roots. Unlike an oak or a silk oak or a juniper, they don't make tap roots, as you mentioned. So what that means is their roots do not thicken over time. In fact, as their roots get farther and farther from the base of the trunk of the tree, they branch into thinner and thinner fibrous forms. And so they don't go into a pipe and then thicken. If they do go into a pipe, they can cause a little bit of problems, but they don't cause those problems by thickening slowly and breaking the pipe, for example, or blocking the pipe, per se. It's why you see palms successfully transplanted at a large size, because they're constantly making those new roots from the base of the trunk. It's also why you can see tall palm trees right next to buildings causing very little, if any, problems for the masonry or the piping. Now, there are palms that have caused problems in both of these cases, but in general, it's a safer bet than a woody tree.
They don't widen either. Something about if they get damaged, they can't like heal themselves like a tree will.
Exactly.
I don't exactly know why that is, but
Well, what palm stems are produced from actually that same bud that produces that single leaf one at a time.
okay.
So what's happening is while it's developing that new leaf, it's also developing part of the stem. And that is called primary growth. And the primary growth just stacks higher and higher on the palm tree or on the stem of the individual palm plant. And that is the forever trunk. So a palm starts in a rosette form, let's say this fan palm here.
Over there.
And it will gradually expand. It does have a stem underground. And then that stem will reach its adult diameter. At that point, it starts to go vertical. It starts to stack the stem material. The entire stem is alive with vessels drawing water upward into the crown and bringing nutrients downward from the carbohydrates created
So that
in the
works
process.
even on those really
Even on those really tall, skinny
skinny
Mexican fan palms that we see lining our streets and down in the peninsula area in Oakland and down in Los Angeles as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have a live stem. It's a really interesting. They don't make wood. They don't make secondary growth. Wood is the product of secondary growth. Those rings, year after year, expand.
I never realized that. I thought that was a very interesting point. I think we have pictures, don't we have
Yes.
some pictures? We have some pictures, I think about 3 to show you, or 2 or 3.
So here we have a shot of a small garden in San Francisco, Richard Gervais Garden.
Okay.
And 2 of the things in this garden are worth mentioning. One is that palms are really great in pots. They can stay growing in a pot for a really long time. So for example, this waggy palm is a great plant to treat almost as a bonsai. It will stay small and beautiful. Yes, I know you love bonsai. The leaves are very sculptural, and it'll slow the growth, almost like putting a goldfish into a small bowl. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And then the other thing in this photograph that we can observe is if behind that ladder is the trunk of a queen palm. If you look upward in this space, you
can
have
see
a
it.
beautiful queen palm crown moving in the wind above this very small garden. And what that does is expand the sense of space in the garden. You get to look upward and see greenery. You get to hear the rustling of the leaves. And suddenly this tiny courtyard garden in San Francisco feels like a transport mechanism to a new place. And it's a really beautiful use of palms. Meanwhile, you have the paving underneath. It's not going to be buckled by surface roots because it's just those fibrous roots finding their way.
And the next one?
Yeah. So here's a tropical garden on the Big Island, Davis Dalbach's garden. And what we have is the use of palms as foliage elements and the use of palm trunks as framing elements. So we've got the big fan palm with the bluish cast on the left, the big feather palm on the right, and these gorgeous leaves that move in the breeze. Meanwhile, this cacophony of tropical foliage is sort of bound in place by the thin vertical stems of the palms. And I think that's a gorgeous use, both as foliage and as framing.
I think that it just adds to the space, whatever spacing that you have. By forcing you to look up, I really never thought of that. But it's true. You have a
And
palm
trees
tree.
trees do that well too. But
That's
the
true.
thing that trees do also is branch and create a big crown. So if you're in a narrow, small space, you lose some of your light. You end up with a very large canopy above you. If you use a palm, you don't have that problem. Now, sometimes we want to have that, right? We want that deep shade. Other times we want to have a sense of a canopy without the theft of light.
Well, a lot of times that canopy is a problem. And, you mentioned about choosing the right palms. Well, I can remember in my early days, I love trees, and more the merrier, and I like exotic trees that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And so I had one in my backyard called Monkey Puzzle
Oh,
Palm.
wonderful.
But when I bought it, it was just a little thing in like a 1-gallon pot. And then it just grew and grew and grew. It was a beautiful, beautiful tree.
Yeah.
But the men would have to come and trim it, the power lines.
Yeah.
And they kept doing that, and it just got so ugly. It doesn't like to be trimmed. That particular tree does not like to be trimmed. And I couldn't take it anymore. And that's the thing that I notice with trees is the canopies are beautiful if they have the room.
Yes.
But if they don't, then they shouldn't have been planted.
Exactly.
And I've done that with a couple trees. That was one,
Yeah.
and that was the one that was just heartbreaking for me to have to
Take down.
Yeah, it was just really, but it was a beautiful tree.
And that with a palm, you might choose the wrong species under power lines. It's too tall, for example, and it would
Yes.
and you'd have to take the crown off and it would die. But if you chose a small palm, say that blue Atlas mountain
Yes.
palm,
Yes.
then that would be a perfect choice for under power lines, for example.
And you also mention in your book on how you can, the relationships between different plant types, like pine trees and scrub.
oaks
Yeah,
and-
and oaks.
Let's take a look.
Ooh, we got, okay. What are we at?
So here we have a photograph from Lotus Land in Santa Barbara of the Blue Garden, in which the palms, they're Mexican blue palms from Baja California, growing with beautiful blue agaves and blue Atlas cedar trees. So the effect here is sort of a succulent, drought-tolerant garden, but with a color theme. It's extremely beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, worth a
Yes.
visit. And of course, that combination with the blue Atlas cedar is sometimes unexpected to those of us who live in California, but in fact, palms grow naturally in habitat with pine trees and with oak trees down in the southeast US and in Mexico as well. So it is actually a very natural combination, conifers and palms, as unexpected as it might be. I think we have another shot. There we have our, a shot from South Carolina, where the native palmetto tree, which is the state tree of South Carolina, you might recognize it from the flag of South Carolina, grows naturally with that southern live oak, which is such a famous tree in the South.
The one on the right.
The one on the right, yeah. And of course, there are also pine trees in that habitat as well, the loblolly pine. Again, it's a gorgeous foliage element because the leaf has this structure, and it's a big, beautiful leaf. The biggest leaf of all plants is a palm leaf. And to have it next to the very fine foliage of the oaks and the pines is
But
very
it'll
pleasing.
eventually get as tall, and then what happens?
Well, what happens is it grows up into the canopy, and then after, it'll pop out of the canopy
Oh,
if it's
yes.
really tall.
Yes,
So,
true.
next slide. And here we have a style shot. This is a photograph of a Mediterranean garden. It's explicitly the Mediterranean garden, and it's maintained by the Mediterranean Garden Society. It's in Oakland at the Gardens at Lake Merritt, right in the middle of Oakland. And they've used that same blue Atlas mountain palm. They also have some other beautiful palms that are Mediterranean climate adapted. And then beyond is the Lakeside Palmedum, which is maintained by the Northern California Palm Society, with some very unusual, beautiful palms that thrive in the Bay Area. They love cooler, foggier temperatures.
One thing that you mentioned in your book that I really liked was the Guadalupe palm. And you were actually kind of comparing it with the two common palms, the California fan palm and the Mexican fan palm.
Yes.
And then you mentioned that Guadalupe was a better choice.
So the Guadalupe palm, if you don't mind, is it's almost a native California palm because it's from an island off of Baja California where California native plants naturally grow. And it's perfectly adapted to lowland California. It does beautifully by the sea, it does beautifully inland and in the wine country in Sacramento. It doesn't get too tall, that's what's so great about it. And yet it has these big, beautiful, lush leaves. The other thing that's really nice is it doesn't have any thorns, and it drops its own leaves after they die, so you get a nice clean trunk on it.
It drops its own leaves. Now that's very considerate.
Exactly. It doesn't hang on to dead leaves the way the Mexican fan palm and the California fan palm do. And those are far more common, but they just get too tall and they are thorny and they can be really messy.
And then I heard about controversy about too much water. You know, some of the trees don't like the water. I
Sure.
forgot
So the
which
Guadalupe
one.
is a very drought tolerant palm. So it's just as drought tolerant as
Can
say
it take
a
the
live
water
oak.
though?
It can also take water, but it doesn't love a ton of surface water. So it wouldn't be a great palm for a lawn, for example.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, just so many things in the book. I mean, it's a big book, so I wish we had more time to. I love the tropical palms too, but I want to hear about the Trans-Bay City Park in San Francisco that you're involved in. Can you tell us about that?
My friend Adam Greenspan, who is a partner at Peter Walker Partners Landscape Architecture, and I have been having a horticultural conversation, let's say, over the last 20 years. And he's very enthusiastic about a wide array of plants, including palms. And he designed what's now called the Salesforce Transit Center Park. And
Okay.
this is the large transit center downtown in San Francisco, south of Market. We've got a beautiful shot of it. You can see the Salesforce Tower right next to it. And then that long green strip is the new park.
The tallest building is?
San Francisco's Salesforce Tower. It's the
Okay.
tallest. It's the new tallest building in San Francisco.
I haven't seen it, I don't
Yes,
think.
it's quite spectacular. And the garden on top, it's 70 feet above the ground because it's on top of a transit center where there are buses coming and going. Well, unfortunately, it's closed for the moment because there's some construction issues. But nonetheless, when it was open, it was a very popular place for people to visit. And the palms create a really wonderful impact because from way up high, if you're up high in the buildings around it, you can see these big, beautiful rosettes and the movement. And they're easy to transplant. Let's look at another photo.
Okay.
You can see them in place and some of the historic architecture around. And then there's another shot. Around one of the skylights, you can see the Mexican fan palms planted, and they cast their shadows onto the skylight, and you can look up and see these beautiful traceries. And they hold up to those monumental skyscrapers around them. And if you look closely, you can actually see that same blue atlas palm underneath that will grow into a shrubby fringe of beautiful blue
That
foliage.
the small one
The
next
small
to it?
one, yeah, underneath at the
Oh.
base. So those are going to become the fringe of that big skylight.
Give us an idea on how big this park is.
This park, I believe, is 5 acres. It might be bigger than that. So it runs for about 3 blocks, and it's about half a block wide. And it takes you probably about 15 minutes to walk all the way around it, but it's the sort of place you really want to explore because there are many different plantings, lots of different types of gardens. It's not just palms.
No.
Plenty. They're beautiful succulents. They're beautiful
They have
Australian
restaurants.
plants. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's not open right now. It will reopen
not
once
yet.
they've figured out their construction issues.
Well, it did have a lot of things where people could actually see, like maybe in the future, entertainment.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of programming, a really active space, and people were just magnetized by it. It was a very popular spot for the few weeks that it was open.
Well, it'll be back
It'll be
again.
back.
It'll be back. So we just have like about a minute or so. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about palms that we should know, or about your book? Or
Well, palms are a wonderful plant family, and they're very useful, and there are many, many more palms than the few that we so commonly see. And sometimes the best choice is a more unusual species because it's better adapted and it's much easier to garden with.
Well, I just learned so much from your book. I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for watching the show. And I just would like you to appreciate the greenery that's around. We see so many buildings and businesses opening up and housing and so forth. It's really refreshing to see a patch of green wherever it is, if it's on the roof or wherever. So just enjoy it. And thank you for watching the show. And please watch again. And would you mind to autograph my book?
I would love to.
Thank you.